Hey, hi, hello. Welcome to Diana Emerson today. We are listening to An Unexpected Killer. Southern California is long regarded as America's Golden State, but it is also the favorite hunting ground for the depraved and sadistic. There's not a lot of evidence. There's no clothing or any of her personal belongings left behind. But little do authorities know they are about to be face to face with one of America's deadliest serial killers, who would go on a killing rampage for over 10 years before they even know he exists. On a warm night in Mission Viejo, California, January 18th, 1986, a serial killer is hunting. 23-year-old Saddleback College communications student Robin Bradley is about to become his first victim. He veers off the interstate for the college. Then he idles around the dimly lit parking lot, confident his chances are high in finding some young, unsuspecting woman on campus. Robin has just finished volunteering for a piano recital at a performing arts center. Unfortunately, she's a young woman in the wrong place at the wrong time. He lurks in the shadows, stalking her before grabbing her from behind. For the briefest of moments, he holds her tight, quickly glancing to make sure no witnesses are around. Robin is terrified, pulling at his head, trying to scream for help. Soon after she gave him her purse, he began to stab her multiple times. He keeps stabbing even after she's down. He keeps at it, in fact, until a car moving through the parking lot scares him off. Her body is discovered moments after the attack by a college professor. A individual who had been given a ride to her car came upon the scene and immediately notified the authorities, called 911. Orange County homicide detectives arrive on the scene to one of the most gruesome killings they have ever encountered in Mission Viejo. Robin was stabbed 41 times. She was laying in a pool of her own blood next to her car. Next to her body was her open purse. Nothing was taken. The professor is asked to ID the body. She can barely say her name. She's so upset. Robin was her student. They had very little, if anything, to go on. They had no solid leads. They could not even determine a motive. There was no evidence a robbery had taken place. The police had to assume that her killer must have known her. There must have been some personal connection, some personal reason for this horrific crime. Typically, detectives would start with the people closest to the victim, boyfriends, family, close acquaintances, and they would move further out to classmates or coworkers, people a little further away in terms of a relationship. After months of investigation, the case drags on. It was clearly a mysterious, horrific crime that left the police very little to go on. And it shocked the conscience of the entire community.
It creates an intense amount of anxiety, especially when homicide detectives sit in on Robin's classes, gauging possible suspects.
The true suspects never really materialize here. They can't find anybody that would, really want to hurt her. She was outgoing, pretty, very intelligent. She was full of life, and everyone loved her.
By all reports, Robin was a wonderful, delightful, intelligent, funny young lady, responsible young adult, had several friends, was destined for great things. And the person that killed her prevented all of those great things that Robin was destined for.
It was a joy to be with. She was very happy. She liked to make people laugh. She was interested in writing, but Saddleback has a really good communications department. She was the disc jockey and did the news and public service announcements, and she was good at it, and she liked it. We were blessed to have this girl in our lives for 23 years.
Robin's murder whips into a sensationalized media storm, criticizing homicide investigators' inability to produce a prime suspect.
They could find no offender. They had no solid leads to go on.
There have been quite a bit of concern around Mission Viejo with the case dragging on for so many months.
You really have to be aware of the fact that surveillance cameras, especially on college campuses, weren't what they are today. And you combine that with the fact that there were no witnesses and no physical evidence, it made it really difficult to nail down a suspect.
One can only imagine how traumatic this is for Robin's family.
Initially, when the phone was ringing in the beginning, the first year or two, I would think, oh, maybe that's the sheriff. They're going to tell us that they've made an arrest. And then after the years went on, it just like, I'd really pretty much given up hope.
The FBI puts their skilled profilers on the case because you want to ensure, as an investigator, that there isn't already somebody in the federal system worth looking at.
But FBI profilers find no matches to active killers in their database. The simple truth is, the investigation is going cold, quickly.
And no detective ever wants to face a grieving family without being able to provide them some sort of closure, some information as to what happened to their loved one. You know, for a detective, really, that means failure. It's beginning to look like this mysterious, faceless killer is going to get away with it.
With all investigative avenues exhausted, Robin Brandley's murder ends up in Orange County Homicide's cold case files. But what authorities do not know is that Robin is just the beginning. 2,000 miles away, and 10 years later, in the district of Wolf Lake, south of Chicago proper, he strikes again.
Mid-April of 1996, a person during the morning hours, a nature walker of sorts, was walking near Wolf Lake, near the shoreline, when he discovered a nude body of a female floating face down. He immediately called 911, and both police from Hammond, Indiana, as well as the Chicago police arrived. It was discovered that the body was on the Illinois side of the lake, so the Chicago police had jurisdiction over this matter.
There's not a lot of evidence. There's no clothing or any of her personal belongings left behind.
Wolf Lake is a very, very remote, secluded lake between the Illinois-Indiana border, an industrial area. Nobody lived nearby it. Nobody worked near it. Certainly at night, it was a perfect place to be alone with somebody.
Wolf Lake is a small lake just between Chicago and Hammond. It's sort of famous back in the days of Capone for having bodies dumped there. But since that time, it's become more of a natural reserve with recreational sport and with kind of a day fishing spot.
Detectives arrive on the scene.
She had been shot twice. Her naked body had been removed by fire department personnel and transported to the Cook County Medical Examiner's office for an autopsy.
With no way to identify the young woman, detectives hope the autopsy will shed some light.
They found no identification anywhere near her body, no clothes. It was a mystery at that point, and she was considered a Jane Doe.
With Jane Does, dental records and fingerprints are typically run through police files.
They had to wait for the body to dry out before they could take her fingerprints. They did discover that she had a tattoo of a heart on her body.
A fingerprint match reveals the victim is 24-year-old Laura Ulacki of Hammond, Indiana.
Laura had a previous arrest for prostitution in 1995, so her fingerprints came up in the system.
There had been 2 gunshot wounds, one in Laura's face and another behind her shoulder. There were bullets lodged in her body. Those bullets were recovered by the medical examiner and sent to the Illinois State Police Crime Lab, where they were found to be .38 caliber bullets.
Police begin to look into Laura's life for possible clues that might help identify her killer.
Laura came from a big family. She had a lot of friends.
Around the time of her death, she was beginning to frequent some bars and clubs in Hammond, she was beginning to use drugs and getting involved with the wrong people.
Whether she'd been paid for sex by her killer is a possibility, which means there's a high probability she met him in the clubs she frequented in and around Hammond. And her murder turns into another cold case, leaving Chicago detectives stuck.
A young student's savage murder on campus stuns the community of Mission Viejo and sends panic throughout the college. But the case goes cold when another girl turns up dead in a suburban lake near Chicago 10 years later. Investigators have no idea they're dealing with a serial killer, a killer who is but a ghost. July 14th, 1996. The body of another young woman is found in Livingston County, south of Chicago.
While still investigating Lori Lackey's murder with no real breakthroughs, another girl is found in the Vermilion River a couple hours south of Wolf Lake.
She had been shot several times. She had been stabbed. And like Laura's body, it was nude in a body of water with no identification. Fishermen had come to the Vermilion River, discovered her body, and immediately called the police. Her body was taken to the medical examiner there in Livingston County.
Medical examiners find that she had been handcuffed and duct tape had been placed over her mouth.
They did discover that she had a tattoo of CC on her body.
She's identified as 21-year-old Cassandra Corum.
She was a young lady in the Hammond, Indiana area. Cassandra Corum's family had sent out a flyer looking for her. They had reported her missing, and they were obviously very concerned about her. And it wasn't until this tattoo was identified and pictures of Cassie was shown to her family, and they identified her.
Considering that Cassandra is also from Hammond, it suggests whoever killed her is hunting in the same place, but disposing of victims somewhere else.
During the autopsy, the medical examiner had revealed that Cassie had been shot 3 times. One of the bullets was lodged in her body. That bullet was also sent to the Illinois State Police Crime Lab, where it was found to also be a .38 caliber bullet.
A month later, a third victim ends up in Wolf Lake, in what is to be known as the Wolf Lake murders. August 2nd, 1996. 22-year-old Lynn Huber, a known prostitute from Chicago, is also murdered.
Almost in the identical location where Laura had been dumped months earlier. And he dumped Lynn Huber's body in Wolf Lake. Lynn's body is removed from the water and taken to the medical examiner's office for an autopsy.
Lynn shot not once, but twice. The first shot kills her, so he then shot her again after she was dead. And there were a lot of stab wounds, predominantly in the back, that again were done after she was dead. This means that not only is he getting bolder, he's also getting more aggressive post-mortem.
Yet they have no eyewitnesses, no gun or knife, no real forensic evidence to find this guy.
However, when Lynn Huber's body was examined at the Cook County Medical Examiner's office, the medical examiner found a bullet lodged in her body that also was a .38 caliber bullet. All of those bullets were examined by the Illinois State Police Crime Lab, and it was determined that all of the women were killed by the same gun, a .38 caliber pistol.
So by early August of 1996, we have 2 police departments from 2 jurisdictions dealing with the bodies of 3 women who were found nude in bodies of water in secluded areas. All of these victims have been shot by the same gun, so police now believe they're dealing with a serial killer.
April 1st, 1997. Officers respond to a disturbance call between a known prostitute and her client at a Hammond hotel.
They had gone on, dates in the past. All of those dates ended up at Wolf Lake, where there would be sex in exchange for money.
She tells police that they have been arguing about money.
This lady had stolen some checks from a checkbook he had in his glove compartment. This infuriated him, got into an argument during which he was chasing her around the truck with a knife trying to kill her. The police were called, but by then he left the scene.
She starts telling the police he wants to drive out to Wolf Lake, take me in the back of his pickup truck, handcuff me, and have sex.
She did not want to do that. In fact, she didn't even want to go to Wolf Lake anymore.
What she was saying sounded very similar to the MO of the Wolf Lake killer. The officer even tells her she shouldn't be doing that because they've had women killed up in the Wolf Lake area. While he's listening to her, he recognizes the man's name from a previous arrest.
Following the motel incident, the officer reviews his prior firearm violation arrest of a South Chicago mall security guard named Andrew Urdiales, who tells him he's a former Marine.
He's so sure of his hunch that he prepares a supplemental report suggesting that this former Marine is a prime suspect in the Wolf Lake killings.
November of 1996, he was working on patrol in Hampton, Indiana, when he and other officers came upon a crack house. Urdiales and his pickup truck and an unknown female were sitting in the truck out in front of this crack house. They approached the vehicle. They interviewed Urdiales and this young lady, during which a search of the vehicle revealed a .38 caliber pistol. Urdiales told the Hammond police officers he was a security guard. He used a pistol for work.
Urdiales was not licensed to carry a gun in the state of Indiana, so officers charged him with a misdemeanor and they confiscated the weapon. The judge later ordered that the gun be destroyed.
Chicago district detectives have no clue a link exists between 3 recent murders of local prostitutes and a college student murdered 10 years prior in California. The 3 Chicago area murders have all been committed using the same gun, a .38 revolver. Hammond, Indiana police have just linked a .38 revolver in their custody to a former mall security guard named Andrew Urdiales.
Now, the Hammond, Indiana Police Department communicated all of this information to the Chicago Police Department. The Chicago police detectives raced to Hammond, Indiana as soon as they could and got out of inventory Andrew Urdiales' pistol that was destined to be destroyed. Thank God it hadn't been destroyed by mid-April of 1997, when that gun was analyzed with all of the bullets from Gloria Locky's body, Sandra Corum's body, and Lynn Huber's body. And scientists from the Illinois State Police were able to determine that that gun, to the exclusion of every gun in the world, was the gun that was used in shooting all of those bullets and all of those women. It was Andrew Urdiales' gun.
Detectives arrest him at his parents' South Chicago home.
He was wearing his security guard uniform, he had a duty belt on, he had a badge, and he willingly accompanied the detectives to the police station for an interview. He was glad to cooperate. He felt some type of a kinship with real law enforcement officials.
Detectives interview Andrew Urdiales.
So they asked him where he got the gun from. He tells them he bought it for $300 5 months ago in Calumet City. He's almost matter of fact about it.
And they asked him, well, did you ever let anybody use this gun besides yourself? He goes, no, absolutely not. The detectives then told Urdiales that that gun was used to kill the 3 women, the pictures of whom was laying out in front of him. He looked at the detectives, he smiled, he stood up, and he said, well, I guess I'm not going to work today. He took off his duty belt, he took off his security guard badge, and then he proceeded to tell the detectives how he killed Gloria Locky, Sandra Corum, and Lynn Huber.
Having been in homicide for so long, I can tell you it's unusual to have a suspect just give it up like that. The detectives must have been surprised that he was just ready to confess.
April 22nd, 1997. Andrew Urdiales is arrested for the murders of Laura Ulacki and Lynn Huber.
Today we're here to announce the arrest of Andrew Dallas. He's been arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder. And those murders are Laura Ulacki and Lynn Hubert. A break came in this case as a result of a report that was submitted by a Hammond police officer. His name is Warren Fryer. And certain information was in that report that brought us into arresting Mr. Dallas.
Bertie Ellis shocks Cook County detectives when he tells them California authorities might also be interested to hear what he has to tell them. Cook County Homicide invites California's detective investigating the Robin Bradley case to Chicago's Area 2 headquarters.
We received a call from the Chicago Police Department that indicated they had arrested a serial murder suspect involved in several murders in their city, and indicated that they had strong suspicions that this could be the suspect involved in the killing of Robin Bradley.
Bertie Ellis tells investigators about how he came to be in California at the time of Robin's murder.
From 1984 to 1991, he was a communications officer in the Marines. He was stationed at Camp Pendleton, just north of San Diego. He wasn't too popular in the Marines. In fact, he was given the nickname Corporal Urinalysis. It's also said that he had an odd twitch that makes it impossible for him to rise in the ranks. He was demoted instead.
And during his career, he was deployed in Operation Desert Storm. He was a radio operator.
Eventually, in his police interview, he gets around to the night he killed Robin Bradley. According to his confession, he got into an argument with some of his subordinates at Camp Pendleton, which set him off. Basically, his rage sent him speeding down Interstate 5 through San Clemente into the Saddleback campus. It's later in the evening by the time he gets there, but he notices a few cars still in the parking lot.
You described the parking lot? Dark parking lot.
He didn't remember her name, but he remembered how she was dressed, how he snuck on the campus that night.
The woman thought she was on the building. Walking towards the car. Can you describe this woman who was walking towards the car? She was white.
He basically took a position in the shadows and waited. Robin Bradley was just a random female. Could have been anybody as far as he was concerned.
I looked at that woman first. It was like, what happened then? What happened? I just wanted to get you where? Like that.
From the beginning of his confession, you can hear how he weaves a disconnect into his narrative. It's almost like even though he's confessing, he's disassociating himself from any real responsibility. This is textbook sociopathic behavior. And so as anger builds to rage one night, he drives up the I-5 and murders an innocent girl. But he realizes he has to be more careful if he doesn't want to get caught. He'd have to prepare better and select victims that wouldn't cause the same mass media hysteria that Robin's murder created. So he decides to focus on prostitutes, runaways, people more difficult to trace. He rents a storage locker in San Diego to better organize and hide his weapons. He starts using a gun and stabs his victims after the fact. There's less chance of blood spatter once the heart has stopped beating, and therefore less chance of being caught. And hunts in cities further from Camp Pendleton. Some are deeper in the California desert, some are less busy than college campus.
He finds his second victim in the Coachella Valley, in Cathedral City, just south of Palm Springs.
There's no shortage of prostitutes and runaway girls in Cathedral City. It's a very transient area. The second victim is Julie McGee, a known prostitute around town.
I had a 45 on my seat. I picked it up and I went to the other side. I told her to get out. She walked over together and I pointed at her and went off. How many times did you shot? She was shot before.
But Julie, like Robin Bradley before her, is destined to become another California cold case. It's only a few months later he strikes again in San Diego. Mary Ann Wells is a single mother, a mature student, and she moonlights as a sex trade worker.
Mary Ann Wells was left in an alley in an industrial area of San Diego, California.
He's getting more confident, but along with his arrogance, his urge is now impossible to resist. He's going to keep killing until he gets stopped.
In Palm Springs, Urdiales finds his fourth and latest victim, 18-year-old Tammy Irwin.
Tammy Irwin was left in the desert in the Palm Springs, California area.
So I remember her name was Tammy. We got a car. Did you have a 45 with you when you were outside the truck? And I had the jump plan at her. And slowly, I got my truck. I wasn't. I was expanding, but the next thing I find, the gun was just pointing at her again. And I thought it was courthouse.
The bodies of Julie McGee, Marianne Wells, and Tammy Irwin were found to have 45 caliber bullets in them. Those bullets were determined by authorities in California to be fired by the same gun. When Marianne Wells' body was discovered by San Diego police, there was a condom near her body. DNA samples were obtained from him, and it was discovered that was the DNA of Andrew Urdiales. So you had physical evidence that linked Urdiales to Marianne Wells' murder, coupled with the ballistic evidence that linked her murder to Julie McGee and Tammy Irwin, coupled with his detailed confessions to killing all three of those women. And by the end of April 1997, everybody knew that Andrew Urdiales was a serial killer, leaving victims in both Illinois and California.
He kills again on a return trip to California in March 1995. Her name was Denise Manning, a known prostitute in Cathedral City. Hers was by far one of the most gruesome crime scenes they found. She was mutilated, shot through the mouth, and left in the desert.
He talked about how he had killed Denise Manning with his second 45 caliber pistol. He left this pistol in a locker storage facility of sorts in the Palm Springs area, where he kept that pistol, a machete, rope, shovels, twine, things of that nature. He would keep this storage locker there in Palm Springs with all of these tools on his tray so that he wouldn't have to take them on a plane back to Chicago.
With each killing, he becomes more and more confident he can't be caught, until that one victim rattles his confidence. He confesses to detectives that one girl in California actually got away.
Serial killer Andrew Urdiales is arrested and taken to Chicago's famed Area 2 division, where he confesses to savagely murdering 8 women in California and Illinois over a 10-year rampage. But when he admits one girl in Palm Springs got away from him, detectives may have the witness they so desperately need.
During Urdiales' confession, investigators were careful to have him explain the killings and record it on tape, using details only the killer would know. However, they would still like to have their ace up their sleeve, for lack of a better term, before turning the case over to the district attorney's office. And that ace is the one victim who got away.
Her name is Jennifer Aspenson, and she's a certified nursing assistant working the graveyard shift in a handicapped children's facility when she accepts a ride from the absolute wrong guy.
Palm Springs, September 27, 1992, 6 p.m.
One night, he is driving in Palm Springs when he saw Jennifer Aspenson, who was waiting at a bus stop, and unfortunately for her, she was late for work. He pulled up in his rent-a-car, asked if she needed a ride.
And I automatically said no. And all that ran through my mind is I'm going to lose my job. This is a nice guy. Why am I so afraid of everything? And I just said, stop, wait, I'll take it.
So she got in the car, we got with our guy, and I talked, he introduced herself, his name was Jennifer. So we're driving and we had a lot of small talk. He said something about being an actress, something like that.
He dropped her off at work, but before dropping her off, he asked for her phone number. She gave him a bogus phone number.
I tried to call her, but couldn't get through. Somebody was a bad number, and I was a little kind of upset about that.
And he realized she had lied to him, which, if you're Andrew Urdiales, he did not like it when women lied to him.
So I got in my car and I go back toward the area. And I saw her.
Sure enough, she's getting off of work about 6 o'clock in the morning. And who's there? Andrew Urdiales in that car.
Asked me, hey, how you doing? And she was there last night. I was trying to get her. She got in the car.
He came back the next morning morning, and he had beat my chest, and I tested him. I got back in the car with him, and that's when he decided he was going to kill me.
And what happened next was a day out of hell.
Then the thing I know, I felt like just reached over and I grabbed him by the hair, and then she got scared, and I produced the gun. And she was pretty much submissive. That's why I told her, turned around, I tied her hands behind her back.
He has her tied up. He is brandishing this machete, this gun. At one point, after bashing her head onto the dashboard, she is overcome by fear. She passes out, and he picks her up and he puts her in the trunk of this rental car.
I walked her back to the car, and I opened the hood, I stuffed her in there. Then I just pulled the trunk out of her. Then I just got in the car and started driving off.
It's miraculous that she did not die after what she had endured up to this point. While he is driving with her in the trunk, she is able to release the latch of the trunk from the inside. He notices that, stops the car, tells her, close it. She does.
And then I tried to get back going again, and I got stuck. So stop. I'm sure I got stuck.
This gives her an opportunity to release that trunk latch again. She does. She escapes out of the trunk, half naked, injured, and she starts running down this dirt road of sorts.
Yeah, half screaming. She fell under pressure, and she ran screaming. There's no car in the spot.
Lo and behold, there is a truck coming down the road with two good Samaritans. They're able to rescue Jennifer. She's screaming, she's crying, and they wanted to chase after this guy. And she's like, no, he's got a gun.
So then I saw her. I don't think it was finished when I started, but I don't know.
Police are called, her mother is called, but by then, Urdiales has already returned his rent-a-car, and he's on a plane from Palm Springs back to Chicago.
It was very scary, yeah. Sometimes I just didn't want to get away because I didn't know. I don't think we able to go in public anymore or do anything. I don't want to go out there and hit people out there, but I just got to be strong now. And all I tell myself is that I fought for my life, so I can live my life, and I am not afraid anymore.
This was in September of 1992. It did not stop this man because in 1995 he returned to kill Denise Meade. And then, as we know, by the spring and summer of 1996, he's killing 3 more women, this time in the state of Illinois.
Miss Asbenson's testimony would be key to the prosecution's case. It's beginning to look like Andrew Urdiales is finally headed for the gas chamber.
But it takes 4 years before he even sees the inside of the courtroom.
Ballistics connects Chicago mall security and former Marine Andrew Urdiales to a string of violent, gruesome murders in Illinois and California. But a victim in California who survived his sadistic torture is the eyewitness that could send him to the gas chamber.
Today we here to announce the arrest of Andrew Urdiales. He's been arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder. And those murders are Laura Ulacki and Lynn Huber.
Me and my partners were tasked with prosecuting Urdiales in Cook County, Illinois, for the Chicago murders, specifically the murders of Laura Ulacki and Lynn Huber.
Following his arrest, Andrew Urdiales is held in a county correctional center for 4 years before he's tried in court.
Because it was a double murder, it was a death penalty case in Illinois, because at that time, Illinois had the death penalty.
Around the same time, coincidentally, the state of Illinois is caught up in a debate about abolishing the death penalty. The Urdiales case, in particular, becomes the center point of that argument, and the case is delayed for 4 years.
Andrew Urdiales' trial for the murders of Laura Ulacki and Lynn Huber begins on April 8, 2002.
The jury heard all of the evidence, the brutality of the murders of Laura, Lynn, and Cassandra, the physical evidence linking the defendant to all 3 of these crimes, the detailed confessions provided by Urdiales to not one but two different assistant state's attorneys.
The defense paint Urdiales as a victim, suffering from PTSD, OCD, bipolar, and Tourette's, which explains the odd twitch he had in the military. They add that he was clearly psychotic at the time of his offenses and suffering from delusions and hallucinations, even hearing voices and taking orders from the CIA.
One of the detectives testifies that Urdiales confessed that he was relieved that he had been caught because he was already getting the urge to kill again.
After 6 weeks, the jury had convicted Andrew Urdiales of the murders of Laura Gulaki and Lynn Huber, and had decided that Andrew Urdiales should get the death penalty.
A little under a year later, the sitting Illinois governor blanket commutes 167 death row inmates, including Urdiales.
Naturally, the prosecution isn't going to give up their opportunity for a second death sentence. A year later, in Livingston County, they indict him for Cassandra Coram's murder.
Right from the start, the trial takes on a bizarre twist, with Urdiales throwing a fit and having to be shackled while at court.
Livingston County prosecutors put on their case. It was a great case, just like Cook County's case. Physical evidence linking the defendant to Cassie's murder, detailed confession. The police down in Livingston County did a great job collecting pieces of duct tape from the interstate when Urdiales left the scene. The defense was an insanity defense presented by his public defenders. The jury soundly rejected that for a number of reasons, not the least of which is that there was a great deal of planning involved by Urdiales before the murders, during the execution of the murders, and then afterwards when he's covering up these crimes, all of which flies in the face of a true insanity defense.
So the prosecution brought in psychology experts. They testified that, unlike what the defense wants you to believe, Urdiales' actions stemmed from his explosive temper, not a mental illness.
Urdiales was proud of what he had done. He truly believed these women deserved to die.
May 10, 2004. Andrew Urdiales is found guilty of murder for a second time and resentenced to death.
So what happened next is Urdiales is on Illinois death row. There was a commutation of Andrew Urdiales' sentence from death in 2 separate counties with all of this evidence to natural life in prison. And keep this in mind, inherent in the insanity defense is an admission by the defendant that he did it. He's just claiming that because of his mental illness, he's not responsible for his actions, all right? So this wasn't a case of a wrongful conviction or some other guy did it, not me. This clearly was overwhelming evidence that he killed these 3 Illinois women. Thank God the authorities in California decided to charge Urdiales for the 5 California murders, along with the attempted murder and kidnapping of Jennifer.
Orange County prosecutors extradite him for the California murders. It takes 7 years to get him back in court.
This took a long time to get down here. This is a great example of why.
And this time, their key witness is none other than Jennifer Asbinson.
I was in that department when this was first came. I actually thought about the jurors giving you the death penalty when I was in that car because I knew that was what he deserved.
This is so concerned with it because he enjoyed it, because he came off on it, and there was absolutely no sense in the
California trial took place in 2018. California jury, based on all of this overwhelming evidence, clearly did the right thing, found Urdiales guilty of all of these crimes.
Andrew Urdiales is found guilty and sentenced to death for the 3rd time in California.
Obviously, all of the families of the victims, Jennifer, all of the friends of all of these people were extremely relieved. Finally, after so many years, they received justice.
Jennifer, to hear the verdict, to hear the sentence recommended by the jury, how come through your head?
When I heard it, I just felt like on my inside, like it was a huge relief, and I just felt like officers were angels, and they just answered the prayers that I had, and so now I just feel like I got my life back. And there is justice. It takes a long time. There's justice. There is love. It's like it ended all that. His story is over.
Unfortunately, they'll never be made whole again, but there is some closure, at least, provided to all of these family members of all of these victims, that the person responsible for all of these crimes has been held responsible. So there has to have been relief for all of these people, and thank God that they finally got it. A prosecutor who gets involved in these cases and is deeply entrenched in all this evidence knows what the defendant is truly like. So obviously, my partners and I were very, very relieved and very grateful that the juries in all these jurisdictions did the right thing.
Andrew Urdiales is finally on death row in San Quentin prison.
Based on reports, approximately 3 weeks after his death sentence in California, he committed suicide.
November 2nd, 2018, 11:15 p.m. Andrew Urdiales commits suicide by hanging in his cell. He is 54 years old. An Olympic athlete and beloved track coach searches his yard for an intruder.
I didn't hear that there were shots.
You heard what?
There were shots.
Police find him shot to death in his own yard.
A burglar's in the backyard. You don't know what to think. You're just like, okay, what is going on? What's happening here?
Just as important as who shot Dave Lout is why they shot him 6 times.
Based on the way the news description was, I knew right away who I thought was the gun.
Oxnard, California, nestled on the Pacific Coast Highway between Los Angeles and Santa Barbara. This city of 200,000 is known for its strawberry fields, ocean living, and a harbor that serves at the closest point to Channel Islands National Park.
The city of Oxnard is in Ventura County. It wasn't the most popular neighborhood in the world, but it was a place where you could raise a family, be comfortable, know your neighbors. It's not a huge place, so you pretty much knew everybody there. My dad taught at Wainimi High School for, 30 plus years, and then my brother taught there also. That's pretty much Oxnard. There are very nice parts of Oxnard where there's beautiful housing on the beach, near the beach, on like a Riverwalk type area. And there's some really rough parts of Oxnard with tenement housing, with people living very close together, with a lot of crime.
It's almost midnight on August 27, 2009. In a middle-class Oxnard neighborhood, Jane Loud hears a noise coming from outside the house. She asks her husband, Dave, to go outside and see what's going on. What happens next is recorded in a frantic 911 call from Jane.
911 emergency, this is Jane Loud. You're reporting. Somebody was in our backyard.
All right, what's the person look like that was in your backyard?
I didn't hear that there were shots.
You heard what?
There were shots.
You heard shots being fired?
Yes. My husband went outside.
I want you guys to stay inside the house. Is everyone in your house? Accounted for in your house?
My husband's still outside.
Dave Loud is already outside and in the line of fire.
Oh my gosh, everybody knew Dave. I always say, like, ever since I was a little kid, he's my Superman. He was very well liked by classmates and teachers and just counselors and people at church. You know, he was just very well spoken, really considerate,
Dave Lout grows up in Oxnard, the son of a biology teacher who also coaches athletics.
Dave was an athlete. He was driven by a very demanding father to be the highest he could be in track and field.
We kind of come through a coaching kind of, background. So, the coaching goes with the sport thing. And Dave was a very, very good athlete. He was going to go someplace or do something at university level.
Jane and Dave Lout knew each other from high school. I think they were homecoming queen and king at their high school.
They were like high school sweethearts. They got along very, very well. They always seemed to just enjoy each other's company.
As Dave rises through the ranks of competitive shot put, he and Jane become high school sweethearts.
Jane came from a pretty well-off farming family. The Laublocker family is pretty prominent in Ventura County. They've been farming our county for years. They are one of the five, I'll say, most well-known agricultural families in our area.
They were ranchers. They had a big ranch. You could go out to the ranch, and even I did when I was a kid. I learned how to shoot out there. You could shoot like a 22 or whatever. You can shoot bottles or whatever.
After getting a scholarship at UCLA, Dave wins the NCAA shot put title and sets his sights on the Olympics. All the while, Jane is by his side. They marry in December 1980, and Dave sets his sights on the 1984 Olympics in Los Angeles.
And he won a bronze medal in those Olympics.
It was a proud moment for me because I was like, oh my gosh, this guy just won a bronze medal. Like, this is incredible. And he was actually a little bit disappointed because he wants to win. He's a winner.
I know he was frustrated with only winning the bronze. He thought he could have done better then, but the city of Oxnard was very proud of him. Matter of fact, the city of Oxnard hosted a big parade for him when he returned. People came out to shake his hand and stuff like that.
I remember hugging him and saying, I'm so proud of you, dude. You did it. He goes, I didn't really do it. I got third. I'm like, you won a bronze medal in the Olympics. You are a winner.
His career faded happening for Olympics. His body failed him.
While training to be a firefighter, Dave seriously injures both knees. He fails to make the 1988 U.S. Olympic team. Suddenly, his career as an athlete is over.
He just wasn't the same. You know what I mean? He did all the rehab. And he was getting older, too. So, trying to rehab both knees at the same time. And he kind of knew he was done. So after that, he's like, okay, you know what? Well, I'm just going to be a teacher. He was a biology teacher like my dad, teaching and coaching. Then he became the AD at Miami High School. And I've had a lot of kids come to me and tell me, hey, I had your brother for a teacher. I had your brother for a coach. Oh, man, he was the best.
In 1999, Dave and Jane Lout adopt a baby boy from South Korea. Their 10-year-old son sleeps in his room as Jane makes a terrified call to 911.
How many shots did you hear? I don't know. Like 1, 2, a bunch? What? Oh my God. Stay, take a breath, walk up to the front bed. Your husband is outside. Can you call him now? Tell him to come in. He's on the phone. Okay, Jake, stay with me. I have officers that are there. I have 2 officers that are there. I want you to stay inside the house.
2 officers arrived at the house. They're looking for an intruder in the backyard. They're young officers. You can imagine how scary that would be if you thought it was a potential gunman. It's pitch black back on the side yard. There's no lighting.
Police discover Dave's body on the ground with blood pooling around his face.
They find Dave dead, lying by the barbecue.
He's face down with his arm tucked underneath him. It's possible that Dave is still holding the gun.
Police initially believe this might be a self-inflicted gunshot wound, but as more police arrive, they discover a gunshot wound in Dave's back.
You can't shoot yourself in the back. Police now know that Dave Lout was shot more than once, and that somebody else shot him.
Jane was interviewed at the scene by a patrol officer, by a detective, and brought to Oxnard PD. Interviewed for almost an hour and a half by the detective, who at the time was the detective of the case.
We went upstairs, and he got up and said, there's something going on in the bedroom. And he says, get the drugs,
He took her upstairs.
If there was somebody in that car, would you let dogs out?
We started to walk when the trash cans were.
Jane tells police she hears a man's voice and then 3 shots.
What the F? That's what Jane hears outside. And she calls 911 after the gunshots. She's in shock when police arrive.
We were notified, I believe it was the next morning, pretty early, like 5-ish, something like that.
This is Detective Sanchez with Oxnard Police Department.
Hi.
I'm sorry to be calling you this early, and unfortunately the reason I'm calling is there was an incident that occurred at David's house.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry to say that he's passed.
Oh.
At this point, it's still under investigation, but it appears that he was shot.
So now you start processing in your head, like, how could this happen? And, you know, what's going on? We drove up to the house, and then they had all of the tape and everything all out. Cops were out and whatnot. And they proceeded to tell us what happened about the burglar. They didn't tell us too many details at the time. They seemed to be very, like, just kind of holding things back.
When the officers arrived on the scene, they found the victim on the ground with multiple gunshot wounds as well as bluing around his head. No casings or weapons were recovered on the scene initially. They also found bullet strikes or ricochets on the wall and the ground surrounding the victim. And additionally, they found hair, blood, and tissue adhering to trash cans around near where the victim was located.
Look, if Dave Love found someone creeping around in his yard, would he have been shot multiple times in the head and then once in the back? Police know there's more to the story. Just as important as who shot Dave Love is why they shot him 6 times. Jane said she closed the door and then heard a man's voice and then shots.
That's what it got me from my dad.
It's going to take a skilled investigator to get at the truth.
In 2009, Oxnard, California, north of Los Angeles. Dave Love, Olympic shot putter and beloved high school teacher, goes outside to investigate a noise.
Police find him face down in a pool of blood, shot multiple times, including once in the back. Would a prowler lurking around the yard do that?
A community is shocked by the murder of its Olympic hero. The students and staff at Dave's high school come to a memorial to share their shock and grief at his death.
I've never seen a funeral like that, ever. It was a gymnasium at the high school. And there were so many people there. There was people that I haven't seen in years that came to Dave's funeral. And, you know, of course, they were, you know, very remorseful and sad. And what was being said at that time was that he was, you know, killed by a prowler. One of the people that went up there to talk about it talked about how, you know, it's tragedy in these days that, you know, you can't even go to your backyard to go throw the trash away, and then you have a prowler in your backyard who shoots and kills you.
Jane and her family don't attend the memorials for Dave.
She wasn't at the funeral, and nobody from her family was at the funeral. That was like, what's going on?
Fearful that Dave's violent murder is by an unseen stranger who is still at large, the community holds a candlelight vigil.
Once again, Jane Lout doesn't come out to the vigil. The stress must be overwhelming for her. The police are wondering if it's more than grief that's keeping her away.
As police interview Jane Love, they notice changes in her story.
I stood right up on the edge of grass and he said, "What the hell?" He's going towards the tree.
Where do you know him?
I was out. There was a shot. So I just run the door.
Earlier in the 911 call, Jane said she closed the door and then heard a man's voice and and then shots.
Okay, did you shut the door and then hear the shots, or did you finish shots and then shut the door? What were the dogs doing? What did they do when they answered that shot? Did you hear them barking at all?
Jane's description of the dog's reaction is an interesting detail. It's common knowledge that dogs have exceptional hearing.
Depending on the particular dog and how familiar it is with sharp, loud noises, it will usually bark or maybe even howl. If the noise was loud enough and close enough, the dog might have even found a place to hide.
Police look for clarification on the gunshots Jane heard.
But you've been around guns, you've been around gunfire. What does it sound like?
It sounds like a pop. Like, quick.
How many pops did you hear?
3.
Were they? Describe them to me, how fast they were. It wasn't pop, hesitation, pop, and hesitation, pop. It was 1, 2, 3.
I mean,
Jane says she hears 3 rapid-fire shots. That might suggest that a semi-automatic or an automatic weapon was used.
So initially on the scene, no casings were located around the body, so that's typically indicative of either a revolver being used or someone picking up the casings. On the scene, they recovered bullets, and they were able to determine that they were 22 caliber class.
The 22 caliber class of ammunition is easily the most common ammunition in the world.
A lot of times with the smaller caliber bullets, because they're so small and light, they cause a lot of damage in the body because they ricochet around a lot.
As part of their investigation, police use a gunshot residue kit to gather evidence.
So when a firearm is discharged, these particles can tell you if a person recently fired a weapon, recently handled a weapon, or if they were in close contact to a weapon when it was discharged.
Police are getting ready to test Jane for gunshot residue when she disappears.
She's in the bathroom washing her hands, and before the detective can stop her, she wipes her hands on a towel. This is very unusual behavior.
Gunshot residue is highly transient, so it's easily removed by rubbing the hands or washing them, which could skew the results of the test.
But police do discover several rounds of unfired 22 caliber ammunition in the residence.
The unfired bullets that were found at the scene ultimately will be of little use as far as evidence goes, but gunshot residue that was found will ultimately prove to be much more useful.
Then, police make a startling discovery.
When searching the house, there were numerous weapons recovered, including a 22 caliber revolver that was found hidden in a grandfather clock.
That's not something you would expect to see every day.
It's typical of a cowboy-style gun that you may see in the movies.
It was my dad's gun that he had given Jane. Yeah, I don't know if it was a Christmas present. That's where the gun came from. Came from my dad.
And so that was the main suspect weapon that was compared.
A prowler lurking around a yard isn't going to take Dave's gun and shoot him with it, and then go into Dave's house and hide that gun in the grandfather.
Do you know where all the guns are in your house?
I think most of them, I think they're all in the gun cabinet. And then he did have one, the handgun thing on the shelf, but I told him when Michael arrived, he said he put it somewhere else.
Dave Love's loving wife Jane, the homecoming queen, becomes the prime suspect in his murder. Does she pull the trigger?
Yeah, it sounds like you have a gun safe. Sounds like you keep the guns locked up. I mean, you never have something in your house you have to use it. Especially like that, right?
No.
One thing is for sure, investigators have a long way to go to solve this murder.
Oxnard, California. Olympic shot putter Dave Love investigates a noise in his yard.
My shop disappeared. I don't know. Like 1, 2.
The story to the police was that they heard somebody outside and that they heard an intruder. Dave went outside. She heard gunshots. She called 911.
Police find Dave's body, shot in the head and back.
Jane does wash her hands and ultimately may have washed away any gunshot residue, making the test worthless. But on the night of the murder, they do find clothing that does come back with residue on it.
So when a firearm is discharged, primer residues, vaporized lead, and burned and unburned gunpowder are expelled from the barrel of the firearm. These particles can tell you if a person recently fired a weapon, recently handled a weapon, or if they were in close contact to a weapon when it was discharged.
Now, Dave's wife, Jane, has become the prime suspect.
There was a point when they said, we think that she did this. And it's like, oh my gosh. So that kind of hits you too, like, wow. So now you start processing in your head, like, how could this happen? And, what's going on?
They find a gun hidden away in the grandfather closet. If it is the murder weapon, there's only one person that could have hidden it there, and she's currently talking to police.
This is a very, very, very serious situation here. And we have other detectives at your house right now. So here and I listen to your story. And I gotta say, it doesn't match up with what's out there. The sequence of events that you gave us, compared with the evidence that's there, don't really add up. Looking at it objectively, there are flags that come up that don't match and don't make sense.
Despite Jane's obvious exasperation with the questioning, police continue to press her for more information.
Well, there are some things we don't know. I asked you about your relationship. I'm asking these questions for a reason. Is it abusive?
Yeah.
Physically? Yeah. Mentally?
I don't get what you're getting at. I don't know what you want. All I want to do is get the hell out of here and go home.
You didn't get upset about anything until right now.
You don't know me.
I don't. And I told you that from the
You
beginning.
know nothing about me. You don't know how I take things. You know nothing.
Don't be afraid to show emotions. Don't be afraid
I'm
to...
not afraid to show my emotions, but I'm trying to be strong.
Most of us can imagine what it would be like to be accused of something we didn't do. We'd feel shocked. We'd feel surprised. We really didn't do it. If we were continually accused, we might even start to get angry. The innocent person's biggest fear is not being believed. The guilty, however, have a different fear, the fear of being caught. Whether you're afraid of being disbelieved or you're afraid of being caught, the behavioral responses may be the same. They're both fear. It's going to take a skilled investigator to get at the truth.
What I'm saying is that you yourself were pretty stoic and calm until I told you that what you're telling me and what we have are not matching up. If you truly didn't do it, then I don't understand why you get so upset about it. Yeah, if I was in your shoes, I think I'll show you didn't do it. You go find the guy that killed my husband. You never asked me that. You never asked me once.
Investigators are finally able to get closer to the truth.
Want to take polygraph?
Yeah, I don't want to go home.
No, I'm asking you, do you want to take polygraph test?
Do I have to do it now?
No. You want to take one?
I'll do one. I want to see my son.
Or you want to just take the dude you want to do an murder investigation? I'll do it right now. Just to find out who killed her husband. Look at everything objectively. We need to find out who killed her husband. We have to be thorough. Okay? And the best way, I think, for us to do that is you take a polygraph, he's here now, you're done, he moves past you, we go to the next thing.
The story kept jumping and changing. One kind of didn't pan out, and another one would come out. She'd say, okay, well, this happened, and then that happened, and then it was an accident.
While Jane now admits that she shot Dave, she says Dave threatens to shoot their son, so she wrestles the gun away from him. The ballistics investigation suggests that this is more than just an accidental discharge of a firearm.
The victim had 6 gunshot wounds to the body. One of them was a graze wound to the left parietal scalp. The victim also had 2 gunshot wounds to the right side of the face, one to the right cheek near the eye, and one below towards the middle part of the cheek. Both of these projectile paths exited the left side of the victim's face. The victim also had a projectile wound to the right upper back. The victim's incapacitating wound entered the right parietal scalp and was recovered from the left front brain.
He's twice as big as she is, and he's shot many times in the head and back. This story still doesn't make any sense.
With police becoming increasingly suspicious of her, Jane meets with her attorney.
I said to her, Jane, one plausible explanation for what happened last night is that he shot me. I just need to know why. It's not who done it. I just need to know the why. And then she broke down and told me what happened.
Jane says that Dave abuses her throughout their marriage, and as a battered spouse, she has to defend herself.
Jane said Jane and Dave's relationship was one of him dominating her. The way he perceived his life was that sheer job was to take care of him in every way possible. That's how Dave viewed her, and that's how, unfortunately, Jane at that time viewed herself.
But not everyone believes her claim of abuse.
We never saw any inkling of abuse at all. We'd spend birthdays and Christmases and things like that. No problems. You'd never see anything. She would never say anything.
The one thing Jane said, she was in a very volatile relationship where she's physically, mentally, and sexually abused repeatedly over 29 years. So there was no happiness in that marriage. It was a violent, volatile relationship.
At this point, with the story still changing, police know they have to keep digging.
Jane and her attorney offer police a new version of events.
He comes out and he starts yelling at her, telling her that she does nothing for him, that she's worthless, and he has a gun, and he's waving the gun around. He pushes her around, and he tells her that he's going to kill her and their son. When Jane tells the story to me initially, she's shaking, talking about it. She guides him outside to get him as far away from her son as possible. As they're backing up, Dave stumbles. Jane hits him like a linebacker, kicks him in the knee, and tackles him down. And she gets the gun. And when she gets the gun, she decides that she's just going to keep shooting until he stops. They struggle. He grabs her by the arm and squeezes her arm, and she shoots him.
It's another change in the story, and it's not the only possibility. Maybe she's not reacting to what Dave did in that moment, but she's rather executing a plan.
Dave's family, including Don Loud's wife, Rebecca, suggest that there is no abuse.
I also remember a very crucial conversation that I had with her. And I remember early on I told you that I had asked her, kind of hinted if Dave ever hit her. Yeah. And I remember the conversation. And I asked her, do you think he would ever hit you? And she said, I don't think so. I mean, I can hear it in my head so clear now. But she said she didn't think so. If I truly felt like she did this in self-defense, or if it was really that bad, I mean, I would. There's just no way. Not anything ever did I ever think that she was in fear for her life. Ever. And if she says that she was, she's lying. She is straight out lying.
If self-defense isn't the motive, then what really happens? And why?
It was just horrible. She pretty much went out to go take his trash out, and she pretty much just kind of got a flashlight and just started bang, 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 bang.
If Jane Loud had intent, then it's murder. If the jury believes that she was acting in self-defense, then she goes free.
She goes back in the house. She's freaked out. She still thinks Dave's coming back. She doesn't think he's dead. She thinks he's coming back. So she hides the gun, and she checks on her son. She comes back out and calls 911.
Both sides agree that Jane shot Dave, and that she called 911, and that she hid the gun. But they don't agree on why she did it.
Can law enforcement use what they know about the gun itself to uncover the truth of what happened?
This is a single-action revolver, which means that the hammer of the weapon has to be cocked before the trigger can be pulled. So each time the hammer needs to be pulled back, and then the trigger needs to be pulled to make a round discharge.
How many pops did you hear? Were they describing to me how fast they were? It wasn't pop, hesitation, pop, and hesitation, pop. It was 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Police know that this revolver requires time to cock back the hammer and pull the trigger. Every time the person firing this gun has to pull back that hammer and pull the trigger, and then pull the hammer back and pull the trigger again, they have time to think about what they're doing.
Jane had experience with the gun because Dave had taken her shooting with that gun multiple times. It was a gun that she was familiar with, and she knew how to fire.
One method for firing bullets rapidly with a revolver is a technique called fanning.
Fanning is a technique that some shooters use to discharge a single action revolver and to discharge it quickly. It involves holding back the trigger of the firearm with one hand and using the palm of your other hand to strike the hammer repeatedly.
Does Jane have enough experience to use this fanning technique to rapidly shoot Dave?
The suspect claimed that she shot the victim in self-defense. However, due to the fact that the revolver was single action, so that the hammer needed to be pulled and then the trigger for every shot, this does indicate pre-thought and continuing to shoot the gun until it was empty.
Police don't find any DNA on the murder weapon. They believe it's been wiped down for that very reason.
February 2010, police called Jane Loud back to the station.
I've been working on this thing, Jane, for a long time. Since it happened. We put a lot of pieces together. As I know and you know, what you told us that night ain't the truth. You know?
Police charged Jane Loud with first-degree murder.
A warrant's been issued for your arrest. Okay, for murder. Understand that? I told you you're under arrest for murder. You have the right to make sound. You understand that?
A guilty verdict means a life sentence, and the use of a gun in the murder will double the sentence. Jane faces 50 years to life if she's found guilty.
She took a lot of money from my mom. $1,500 for this, or $2,000 for that.
If they convict you, you're never getting out. You'll never hold your son again. You'll never hold your family again.
The stakes for Jane could not be any higher.
Along the Pacific Coast Highway in Oxnard, California, Jane Loud admits to shooting her high school sweetheart. Olympic shot putter Dave Loud. Jane fires all 6 shots in the single-action revolver. Gunshot residue found on bullets, as well as the ballistic evidence gathered from each shot, give police some clues about where Jane is and how Dave is positioned.
Jane Loud may have acted with intent or premeditation. Prosecutors don't know if there's an entirely different motive involved. And at this point on the mind of the jury, they have to be concerned about reasonable doubt.
Prosecutors offer Jane a plea deal. Plead guilty to a voluntary manslaughter charge.
He offered us voluntary manslaughter 11 years with no gun. And I said, we'll make it 6 years. And he said his office would not do 6 years.
In California, a crime committed using a gun can mean an enhanced sentence of 10 to 25 years.
I get a call from the DA saying, who will agree to the 6 years if she quits tomorrow? Okay, 6 years in voluntary manslaughter means 3 years actual time. It's half time. Okay, so it's a 3-year sentence. This is the deal of the century. Okay, I literally celebrate.
That night, Ron gives Jane the good news about the reduced charge.
Jane tells me she doesn't want to deal. She wants to go to trial. She was resolute that she wanted to go to trial.
Jane tells her lawyer she wants to go to trial and be found innocent of any crime on behalf of abused spouses everywhere.
The stakes for Jane could not be any higher.
If they convict you, you're never getting out. You'll never hold your son again. You'll never hold your family again.
Jane refuses the plea deal, and her murder charge goes in front of a jury. Using forensic evidence, gunshot residue, and bullet trajectories, the prosecution tells the jury that Dave Loud is a sitting duck in the side yard.
A damaged lead bullet was found underneath the victim's body, which had threads from both his t-shirt and sweatshirt embedded onto the projectile, as well as fragments from the concrete. The wound was in contact with the clothing and the ground when it exited the body, consistent with the victim being on the ground when he was struck with this projectile.
This evidence doesn't look good for a self-defense case. If he's already laying on the ground when he shot a final time, he's the one who's defenseless.
The victim had wounds to both the right and left side of his body. as well as some of the wounds being from front to back and some from back to front. Some of the wounds were close range, near contact to contact, where others were distant. So this indicates movement on the part of both the victim and the suspect.
I mean, I guess one of them like skipped his ear, and then another one kind of popped his shoulder, and then like that's only two. So all of a sudden he kind of went down, and then she got him in the jaw, and now he's going down. So she got three left, and he's like on all fours, and he's looking up, and she just kind of.
The prosecution suggests that Jane may have a financial motive for killing Dave.
Yeah, they had debt. Yeah, was Dave upside down financially? Of course he was. Was Jane ever going to be poor and homeless? No. Jane never wanted or could want for anything again. They had plenty of money. Her family was always going to take care of her.
Police asked Jane's mother about the family's finances.
You guys kind of kept in the dark about a lot of stuff?
I never questioned her when she needed money.
What did she tell you? Why did she need all this money?
Pay bills.
Police discover that Dave's mother is lending them money as well.
You know, Jane had been taking classes at Oxnard College, so that she was preparing to be, I guess, a preschool teacher. So not really sure. It never got explained to me, but she needs money for tuition.
She took a lot of money from my mom. $1,500 for this, or $2,000 for that, and my mom was like, okay, you know what? Didn't ask a question. She just gave it to her. Like, okay, you know what? You need it. Go ahead.
Then, a few months before the shooting, Jane asked Dave's mother for a big loan, $25,000.
There were definitely money issues at play here, but is that enough to suggest that Jane shot Dave for financial gain?
A prosecution witness testifies that Jane stands to collect almost $300,000 in insurance money from Dave's death. The defense presents its evidence to the jury that Jane is systematically beaten, abused, and raped over the 29-year relationship.
Jane lived with a monster. You're going to hear about it. You're going to hear in detail about what he did to her. You're going to hear in detail about how he treated her. You're going to be in detail about how he hurt her. He is not the hero of the Olympics. He is the monster who abused her for 27 years. If you understand domestic violence, you understand the why in this case. And the why was that Jane was domestic violence because he was trying to save her son's life.
Jane Love takes the stand to testify in her own defense and set the record straight. Olympic medal-winning shot putter Dave Luck is shot by his wife Jane, who is charged with first-degree murder. She claims to have done it to end decades of abuse at Dave's hand. But the prosecution suggests that this is no heat-of-the-moment act.
The way Dave is shot gives Jane time to think about her actions, according to the prosecution. They also believe that money was her motive.
Our theory was basically long-term domestic violence, which resulted in PTSD, which resulted in her believing that she had to defend herself at night when he pulled the gun. She was on the stand for 3 or 4 days. It was emotional. It was excruciating.
On the witness stand, Jane says that for 29 years, her husband beats, rapes, and degrades her. Jane says that Dave is the one who takes the money, and she has to borrow $25,000 to repay the school.
The defense shares all of this with the jury and pokes holes in the prosecution's case that this was about money.
Now the defense gives their side of the moments leading up to Dave's shooting.
Jane took her son and some other kids with some other moms to the beach in Oxnard. They had a beach day. And they got back late because the kids were having a good time. And Dave was home. He had been drinking. And he ran out of booze that day. He was mad at Jane for not being there to make him dinner. So around 7 o'clock, she makes him a hamburger. Dave throws the hamburger at Jane, saying it's not good enough, make him another one. He's raging in the house, he's yelling and screaming. He's calling her all kinds of names.
So how did that gun get into Jane's hands? Was it in the gun safe? Was it already hidden in the grandfather room? Or did Dave have it and Jane wrestled it away?
The defense says Jane can rapidly shoot the gun in her hand, questioning whether she shoots Dave in the heat of the moment or has time to consider her actions.
The only dispute in the trial was the intent and self-defense and the mental issues of Jane Loud that she had.
In the end, it's all about how Jane gets the gun. It's all about how she uses the gun. It's all about what she does with the gun after she uses it. That helps the jury determine whether there's intent or not.
And while he was looking away from her, a distance of several feet, she raised that revolver to the back of his head, and she fired that first shot.
They said it was one of the longest trials they've ever had. It was like 11 weeks. It was a long time. It was tough. Yeah, it was 11 weeks of that stuff. Man, that was brutal. Like some days you came out of there and you felt like, okay, that was a great point. You felt good. Other days you just felt like, oh my gosh, this is horrible.
The jury returns their verdict. Jane Loud is guilty of first-degree murder.
They did an outstanding job. They were able to take and decipher all the stuff that was lies and put together what the truth was.
All that mattered was that there were 5 bullets in that guy, 2 in the back of his head, and the jury didn't accept self-defense.
After refusing a plea deal and a 6-year maximum sentence, Jane Loud is sentenced to 25 to life for the murder, as well as a gun enhancement of another 25 years.
I go back to that day she turned down the offer. I was in this conference room where I'm talking to you, sitting at this table to my left with her, and begging her to take it, for saying no. I failed her for not being able to convince her to take that deal.
Sometimes you feel okay about it, like the justice system did its job, and it did all that it could do. But I still don't have a brother. You know what I mean? And that's pretty much bottom line. I mean, I've had people that come up to me, just like over the past few years, and just say, "Your brother was just such a good man." Not just because of what he did, it's just because of who he was. I mean, there's so many things that I still wish he was here.
Texan beauty queen, and a handsome Texan oil tycoon.
They become a power couple, 2 of the beautiful people.
How could something so right go so wrong?
Jimmy Jost was shot 13 times by a Glock 9mm handgun.
When love dies, sometimes it dies hard.
She and the son were gone, and people feared maybe it was a murder and kidnapping.
These people are in big trouble.
And everything's bigger in Texas.
The investigation involved state police, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, the Secret Service.
Austin, the capital city of the Lone Star State, Texas.
Austin is perhaps the most liberal area of Texas, and it also happens to be the state capital.
It's one of the most populous and fastest growing cities in the USA, and it's been growing since the Ice Age. Early inhabitants of the area identified in 9200 BC. Today, Austin has the nickname Silicon Hills because of its thriving tech and innovation industry. It's been voted one of the best cities to start a business and one of the best places for female entrepreneurs.
If you're looking for entertainment, you don't have to go past the Austin city limits to enjoy great music.
a place of warmth and natural beauty. It's a green oasis and has the characteristics of the desert, the tropics, and a wetter climate, all combined. Austin entrepreneur and socialite high flyer Rhonda Glover is missing. On Sunday, July 25th, 2004, her aunt drops by Rhonda's home to see if she could make contact with her niece.
Rhonda Glover's aunt had come to Austin. She tried to get hold of Rhonda at the house. No answer. Went by there. Jimmy's car was there. There was still no answer.
She finds the garage door and a utility door open. But what she smells emanating from the house has her scrambling to call 911.
The smell is unlike anything she's ever smelled before. It's the smell of death.
Austin Police Department are deployed to a home on Mission Oaks Boulevard in southwest Austin.
This is a very upscale neighborhood.
The house was like any other pleasant upscale home in any contemporary American suburb. It wasn't overly ostentatious. It was like a normal suburban house of a middle-income family.
Police are warned that the unlocked doors are very out of character for these homeowners. The aunt fears something is dreadfully wrong within this idyllic home.
Officers enter the home and they're immediately assaulted by a foul odor. There are also large insects crawling all over the home, and this indicates to them that there's likely a dead body.
For homicide detectives, they know the smell of death. When those first two cops responded, they knew someone was dead in that home.
As the two Austin police officers move up the stairs, the offensive odor increases in intensity. On the second floor, officers find the decomposing body of a male victim lying in the hallway near the doorway of his upstairs bedroom.
The victim is male, and he's been shot to death.
Then police give the aunt the news.
Death notifications are difficult under any circumstance and are extremely traumatic for family. In this case, police need to get very pressing information from the aunt. Given the state of the home, it's not an appropriate place for the conversation, so they do the best they can with the circumstances.
The aunt tells police who resides in the mansion.
A well-known Texan lives there with his partner, her niece, the famous beauty queen Rhonda Glover. It's one of many of their upscale homes.
The aunt feels certain that the victim is oil man James Jost.
James Jimmy Jost is born in Dallas, Texas. Jimmy grows up in the Memorial area of Houston and graduates from Memorial High School. Then he attends the University of Texas in Austin.
Jimmy was an oil millionaire entrepreneur.
The Jost family oil money goes back 3 generations. Jimmy's inspiration comes from his grandfather, who is known as a wildcatter, a term for an oil man who drills exploratory wells in territory that's not already known to be an oil field.
Jimmy inherits the family wildcatter spirit. He's always searching for the next big oil strike or the latest oil drilling technique.
In the 1980s, he employs horizontal drilling, as it is becoming the very latest technique to reach hard-to-tap oil reserves. The move pays off.
Jimmy is a man who inherits millions from his family and then goes on to build his own fortune from pioneering oil and gas drilling technology.
Handsome and charming, innovative and hardworking, Jimmy Jost is a titan in the Texas oil and gas industry.
Jimmy Jost had a roller coaster career as a multi-millionaire oil magnate and entrepreneur. He rode the market like a placid pony in front of the grocery store. When it was up, he was up. When it was down, he was down. But he always came back.
He is also a socialite, known for fabulous dinner parties that Jimmy prepares.
Friends describe Jimmy Jost as a great guy, a good, loyal friend.
He is a warm host and loves to make people laugh. He has countless friends in Houston, many of them oil men.
He was calm, he was confident, he was polite, courteous, and he had a calming influence on other people. He was nonviolent and very charming. Women loved him.
There always seems to be beautiful women in his circles. They're frequenting the most upscale restaurants and bars. Jimmy always seems to be in the center of the fun.
Jimmy likes to spread his wealth around. There are legendary stories about him giving generous tips to waiters and picking up huge tabs. Even though he's wealthy, Jimmy isn't a snob. He's interested in people from all walks of life. He was known to invite the valet or the waiter to his parties.
His longtime partner is a former Miss Houston beauty queen, Rhonda Glover, who runs her own recruiting business. Jimmy and Rhonda have a 9-year-old son together. Detectives search the mansion for clues. Shell casings from 6 bullets are found near the body, and an additional 4 shell casings are recovered in the bedroom.
At first glance, Jost is found on his back, near the doorway to the bedroom, and there's blood spatter. A search warrant is obtained, and police don't waste any time. Crime scene specialists are deployed.
There is blood in the hallway, as well as the bedroom, and an increased blood concentration soaked into the carpet where Jost goes to the ground.
It looks like he tries to flee and isn't able to make it.
All of these blood spots found on the surfaces will be subject to an analysis by a blood spatter expert. As many friends as Jost has, it's conceivable he also has enemies. He's incredibly wealthy, and maybe this is an oil deal gone bad.
Police search the property for evidence of a possible robbery, but there are no signs of forced entry, and nothing seems to be missing from the home.
Jimmy has a very beautiful partner, and he's used to Rhonda turning heads. That right there could make some people envious.
When the body of Jimmy Jost is found, Rhonda Glover and her son are missing. Sophia has simply been kidnapped. Perhaps they're going to be held for ransom.
With Jimmy brutally slain and his wife and young child missing, what could have happened to Jimmy Jost and his family? Could they have been abducted by his killer?
The quest now is find Rhonda and find her son. Rhonda did not give up her interactions with other gentlemen aside from Jimmy, and Jimmy was rather possessive.
The sheer number of bullets indicate rage by the shooter, or maybe an excessive fear of Jimmy Jost.
According to Rhonda, there are 2 sides to Jimmy.
You know, there's a group of devil worshippers, and I'm just a lonely girl, and people think I'm crazy.
Mega-rich Texas oil heir Jimmy Jost is found murdered in the mansion he shares with his partner, former beauty queen Rhonda Glover.
Jimmy Jost was shot by a Glock 9mm handgun, 6 shots below the waistband of his shorts.
His body is badly decomposing, and police gather evidence to try to understand what happened at the crime scene. But when police discover Rhonda Glover has been missing since March, they fear she too may be a victim of Jimmy Jost's killer.
She and the son were gone, and people feared perhaps this was a kidnapping case. Maybe it was a murder-kidnapping, and so they were searching for Rhonda.
But actually, there's trouble in paradise.
Rhonda's aunt tells police that neither parent is supposed to have custody of the boy.
The aunt comes looking for Rhonda because no one's heard or seen from her for several months. But she knows Rhonda and Jimmy have an on-again, off-again relationship, so what she thinks is that perhaps the couple is reconciled, and Rhonda just forgot to let her know.
Police canvass the area, and no one has seen anyone other than a friendly white male, presumably Jimmy Jost, coming in and out. One neighbor recalls seeing Jost's garage door open on Thursday. Another recalls seeing the garage door open on either Monday or Tuesday. The garage door being unlocked is so unusual, a neighbor walks over and knocks on the door to check on Jimmy, but no one answers, so she leaves.
The neighbor confirms that Jost did have various house sitters from time to time, but how well did he know these house sitters? Police need to track down exactly who's been at the mansion lately.
Police survey the area to see if there are any surveillance cameras in the vicinity.
This is a gated community. Perhaps there's a list of who's come and gone.
Officers determine that access codes to this gated community aren't personalized, and there's no way of tracking who comes in or out of the area.
It gets worse. There are also no cameras to monitor who's coming and going.
The Travis County Appraisal District information reveals the home on Mission Oaks is owned by Rhonda Glover, and utility records also show an active account in Glover's name for that same residence.
So the home does not belong to the victim. It's actually one of the many gifts he's given Rhonda.
Rhonda Glover is a small-town Texas girl who gets her start by winning big prizes in rodeo beauty competitions.
Rhonda Glover was an attractive 5 inches beauty queen and rodeo queen. She was quite active in the rodeo circuit. I mean, she wasn't a bull rider, but, you know, you could be a rodeo beauty and a beauty queen.
And that famous beauty catapults her out of her small-town world and into the stratosphere of upscale Texan glamour.
She had a great personality, and she was a charming person to be around.
She competes in bigger and bigger beauty pageants across the state. And she's a contestant for Miss Houston.
She doesn't win the crown, but she does meet a lot of rich Texan men who are intrigued by her beauty and charm.
In 1989, a Texan real estate mogul takes Rhonda to a party.
But it's a terrible date. She keeps staring at a man at a party who's got a lot of charm and charisma.
Her date comments that it's rude to stare at other men when they're together, but Rhonda admits that she just can't keep her eyes off the man across the room.
And that man turns out to be Jimmy Jost.
The next day, the real estate agent happens to run into Jimmy, whom he never met before. He tells Jimmy how awful his date the night before was. This is how the two men begin what becomes their greatest friendship. And it's also how the door gets opened for Rhonda to meet Jimmy.
Not long afterwards, Rhonda Glover and Jimmy Jost are introduced. There's an immediate attraction between the two, and they begin dating.
Rhonda is renowned for her sexual prowess, and Jimmy is completely smitten by her. It doesn't take long for them to get serious and moving together.
He was a perfect match for beauty queen Rhonda Glover. If you ever met Rhonda, you'd know immediately she was energetic, enthusiastic, outgoing, and a real charmer. And great fun. She and Jimmy hit it off immediately.
They become a power couple, and both make a lot of money. They move in high society and attend glamorous events with the Texas oil crowd. They don't marry, but on October 24th, 1994, the couple have a child together.
The baby doesn't slow down their high-flying lives. Jimmy and Rhonda continue to live it up.
Jimmy buys Rhonda her own house in Austin, several cars, and though he usually gives her tens of thousands a month to cover her costs, he once famously writes her a check for $1 million to use for spending money. Although he's a wildcatter, a daring entrepreneur, and a fun-loving, life-of-the-party type, he's passive when it comes to Rhonda. She's the one in charge. But years pass since the two fall in love, and now they're known to drink and to get into big arguments. In fact, the police have been deployed to the mansion on Mission Oaks Boulevard on more than a dozen occasions because of domestic troubles.
Rhonda did not give up her interactions with other gentlemen aside from Jimmy. And Jimmy was rather possessive. He was never violent with her, quite the opposite. He always forgave her. As I said, she could basically do whatever she wanted. He just was crazy about her anyway.
By the end of 2003, the money's dwindling. Their regular fighting and occasional drug use leads Rhonda's mother to fight for and win custody of their child.
Jimmy Jost's brother calls police with information he thinks they need to know. He tells authorities that the owner of a popular shooting range has told him